Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and that, of course, means some smart talk radio is in your future, and this segment is certainly no exception. Got a good one, an old friend of this show. Her name is Denise Winston. She is all about you and your money and telling you how to take care of it and lovingly let it grow and how to take care of it very, very wisely. For 25 years, she was a successful banker. She started actually as a teller and rose through the ranks to becoming a business banker. She has had quite a bit of exposure in the media, everywhere from Fox to CNN to the Financial Times to you name it. You have heard of Denise Winston and seen and read of her work. We're very happy to have her. Denise, how are you, my friend?
It is so good to be back with you, Warner. Thanks for the invitation to spend some time with you and everybody listening.
Well, you have a wonderful advantage on us, and that you live in an area called California, and we need to be there right now.
Far cry from where you are, huh?
Well, yeah, it feels that way anyway. Hey, well, let's do this. Let's, again, very poor introduction on my part, but again, for those that are new that have not heard you on this show before, give us a little bit about your background and why, frankly, personal finance and helping others is so important to you.
Gosh, well, I'm a financial expert, and yes, you nailed it. I am a 25-year former banker, but bottom line, I started working in the bank when I was 18, and I really saw how the rich got richer and how the poor got poorer. And over time, I came to realize that really most of us never really learn about dealing with money, and we get sucked into the vicious cycle when we get our first paycheck of, working and spending, and we get ourselves into a lot of sticky financial situations because we are undereducated and misinformed, and we don't know who to turn to and who we can trust. And, that's when I realized that later in my career that I actually have some unique opportunities to help people because I've lived on my own since I was 16, and I'm able to put that 25-year career to good use. And really, I'm just like a good friend sitting there saying, you know what, I know it's hard, but it's going to be okay. You can do it, and here's how. And that's how I get to use my work now. So it's really fun. I love it.
What is, this may be too broad of a question, but what is it that the average American, we wake up every day, what is the one thing or the overriding thing, in your opinion, how do we look at money and our finances maybe the wrong way?
I think that most people feel like they're out of control, like they don't have any control. They just go to work, they get their paycheck, and they're on this constant grind. And, the reality is that each of us has the ability to control a great measure of our financial situation. And a lot of times we get sucked into being tempted to really feel like we need to upgrade our lifestyle or even, help the economy by spending more money. And really, we have to stop and take inventory. And, we give so much of our time to everyone else. It's one thing that we can do is give a little bit of time and attention to our financial situation because money affects so many areas of our life. When you think about it, leading cause of divorce, just read a study, financial stress makes you lose 12 IQ points, raises your blood pressure, you name it. It has can impact a lot of areas of our lives. So it's a tough one. I know you work with individuals. You also do a lot of speaking in front of groups. Is there a fundamental difference in how men and women look at money? I don't necessarily think that it's so gender specific. I think that there's usually a saver and a spender is what I see more often in the ranks. But I think the overall look a lot of times is that maybe women spend more money, especially in a traditional household where the wife is probably making a lot of the buying decisions, and she's got to buy for the food and the clothing and probably decor of the house. And men, what I do see is that men will walk in when it comes to shopping, they'll get what they want and leave. They're more like a hunter.
Right.
We're more like a gatherer. We're out looking at the everything, seeing what's out there.
I found the golf club I need. I'm out of here.
Exactly. I want black pants, X size, I'm done. And they'll even order it online so they don't even hassle with it. So I don't necessarily, like I said, don't necessarily think that it's a gender-specific thing, more a personality style, I think.
The last time we talked, it's been a little while, maybe a year or so, but we were still in the throes, and maybe still are, in what would be easily considered the most difficult financial crisis most have experienced since the Depression. What are you finding over the course of the last year? Are things getting better for the average American family? What do you see out there?
I see that people are more open and available to really think about their financial situation. I just did a corporate workshop yesterday. It was a full-day workshop, and when we got to the goal-setting session, and this is what's really kind of frightening to me, is that most people never stop, and I ask them, what is it that you want? Number one, what does money mean to you? But more than that, how much money do you want, or what is it you want? And it really is interesting when we talk about setting goals. You know, I think about financial goals just like using a GPS. We're all familiar. You plug in, you know, your destination, you hit enter, and it automatically calculates, okay, Denise, you're in California, you want to go to New York, 3,000 miles, going to take X to get there. And you know, Warner, would the GPS ever come back and tell me, Denise, are you crazy? Do you know that that is 3,000 miles away? It'd never say that, right, Warner?
Probably not.
Right.
No.
So, but yet a lot of times what we do is we will have that conversation with ourselves and we'll automatically talk ourselves out of whatever we think we want, and we don't even try. So, you know, it's very simple to get where you want. I didn't say it's easy, but it's very simple when you stop, figure out what you want, and calculate exactly what you need to do to get there. So I find that people are more open to that and feeling like maybe they do have a little bit more control.
So are you suggesting that just simply by sitting at the kitchen table and coming up with some goals, that sometimes the roadmap there is not terribly difficult, it's simply the discipline to stay on the road?
I agree with you, Warner, and just sitting at the kitchen table for 30 minutes, it's amazing. You know, we'll sit in front of the TV and blow off, you know, an hour, 2 hours a night, not thinking anything about it, or play video games or whatever the case may be, or even planning for a vacation or buying a car. You do a lot of research for that. But when it comes to our financial well-being, exactly that, sitting down. And, you know, what I like to make sure that people do, and this is we're talking at a great time of the year, is really to plan ahead for good financial news. A lot of people will be getting their taxes done very shortly, and they get that tax return in the mail, and they are like, woo-hoo, let's party, let's go buy a new flat screen, take a vacation. There is an urge to splurge. But when you already have that financial plan and that destination where you want to go, and it's earmarked in advance, you know, if someone's got a lot of debt, which is easy to do after the crisis we've been through, if you earmark that money in advance, it's amazing how much you might be able to knock out with a raise, a bonus, overtime, your tax return. You know, all you have to do is have that plan in place and commit to the action.
What about, and again, I want to be careful here and not get too specific, and you're not trying to give advice necessarily over this show, but your general global view of credit cards, their use, and how we look at them?
Oh, boy. They can be dangerous, and they can be very effective. I kind of think about it as a surgeon, and I use credit cards in my life as a very strategic financial tool, just as a surgeon would use a scalpel. But I also have to respect them because they can be sharp, dangerous objects that can be very dangerous. So I think what's happened is because credit is so accessible, and we experience this in the workshop frequently, is that when we sit down and we run our expenses, variable and fixed, each month just off the cuff, and then you look at your bring home pay, a lot of times we're spending more than we are bringing home. And because we have access to credit, we don't realize that that's happening. And so I can tell you, my husband and I started about 6 months ago, we started with a 30-day credit cleanse. And that means we couldn't use any plastic for 30 days. We had to pay cash. And I will tell you, that one exercise has saved us such an enormous amount of money, I can't even begin to tell you.
Did it reduce your purchases, or did it just help you bring down some debt? Tell us about that.
Well, you know, what's interesting is I don't know if this happened to you, but I had a credit card bill 1 month, and I said, this has got to be wrong. There is no way we could have spent that much money in 1 month. I had packages showing up on my door, and I had just gotten into a very relaxed, you know, go to the gas pump, put in my credit card, not even look at the total. I just needed the gas. And, you know, yes, I'm a financial expert, but I'm like everybody else, and sometimes you get busy and you get disconnected from your money. And, we sat down, communicated, and we said we need to do something about this. So by taking the credit cards out of our pocket, what it did was connect me back to the value of that dollar. And I had to think about spending. So we both allotted each other with a certain dollar amount for a 2-week period, and we had to pay cash. And that makes you think about your purchases a lot more than just being able to buy whatever. And we could buy whatever we want, but I don't want to live that way. I want to be in touch with my money and, make good choices and save enough and not get back, into that just vicious cycle.
Right.
So it's been extraordinary. Now, the credit cards are back in our pockets. However, we do still have that cash amount, and every time we use a credit card, you have to put the receipt with that cash in an envelope, so when the credit card bills comes, there's still all the money there, and you haven't overindulged. And to answer your question, I think that the credit card gives us access to things that we may not be, they're impulse buys.
Well, you know what? I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. We could talk about credit cards for a long, long time, so could a lot of our listeners. But anyway, quickly, quick ID here. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio, Smart Talk Radio. Certainly in this segment, we're talking to Denise Winston. She has been on this show before. She is one of America's leading financial experts. She also leads seminars. She's very interested in your money and helping you take care of it and preserve it and use it wisely. She also is connected with children and their money as well. I'm intrigued with that subject, Denise. What do kids need to know about money?
Boy, what we need to remember as parents is oftentimes that we're engaging in risky financial behavior with our kids, and that means that a lot of times, especially when we're busy and our kids are going through, whatever, we often give and we provide. And as parents, we need to remember that we're supposed to, our responsibility is to provide shelter for them, clothing, food, and, not necessarily designer clothes and a car and cell phones with data packages and, it gets out of control. So kids need to, number one, know the value of a dollar, and most importantly, Warner, is know the value of an hour of their time. And this goes true for us, too, as parents and adults. We need to understand that an hour of our time can be quite extraordinary. Take a kid that's thinking about going off to college. If they spend an hour researching and writing an essay to submit for a grant or a scholarship, and they get a $10,000 scholarship, that's basically $10,000 an hour, right? So if we can teach our kids how to use their time to, just efficiently, and that how valuable it is, I think that is key. But we also need to teach them about credit and banking and just about daily, spending on needs versus wants.
What about, let's talk about that. Again, you have said it very succinctly. Do parents understand that message, do you think? And again, I know we're not here to indict or applaud, pat parents on the back either way. But just in general, what do you see?
I'll speak from my personal experience. As a mother, my daughter's 23, almost 24. I know what it's like to be a busy professional, and I had gone through a previous divorce, now happily remarried, blah 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 blah. And I think that you get caught up in just day-to-day survival. And we, personally, it took some pretty extraordinary things to happen where I had to ask myself this one very fundamental question. If something happened to me, would my daughter be okay? And that happened when my mom passed away. And you may know this, may not. I've actually lived on my own since I was 16. And that has turned into a very unique blessing because I have life skills. And I know without a shadow of a doubt I could survive pretty much any circumstance. But when I ask that question of myself as a parent with my daughter, if something happened to me today, could she cook? Could she clean? Could she grocery shop? Could she deal with money? Could she make good, solid decisions in that realm? Because I know that she will spend every day make about 6 to 10 financial decisions. When she was 13, I can tell you I wasn't doing a great job. But from that day forward, I made a very strategic plan and put it into action, and I put my child's need to learn before my feeling as a parent to want to give her what I didn't have. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. You're the founder of Money Starts Here, and it's a financial education company. I think that's the word education there is gigantic. You're not trying to invest money for people. You're not trying to do that. I think I sense what you're trying to do is use some well-defined lessons over the course of the several decades you spent in the financial industry and provide some common sense advice, just using your experience. Is that a fair statement?
That is absolutely a fair statement, and that's actually the statement I often get from people when they attend either one of my lunch and learns or the workshop. They're like, this is day-to-day stuff, real-world stuff that it's not really taught, how to review loan documents and how to deal with your credit score. A lot of people are out there teaching you to invest, and I don't do anything with investing. It is all, day-to-day, everyday essentials when it comes to money, so you're dead on with that.
Here's another thing, too, and this is a little bit of a stray off the beaten path here, but tell us a little bit about your involvement in the Great American Nobel Challenge. Tell us about that.
The Great American Nobel Challenge is an incredible way to get our teens to use their adversity. Now, what's interesting, my connection with the Great American Nobel Challenge, I've been able to use the adversity of living on my own for the greater good at this point in my life. And what's interesting with the Great American Nobel Challenge is it's a campaign that helps kids deal with the bullying and the online responsibility that they need to be aware of. And they create and produce videos, and they're entered into a competition. And then there's these awards that happen every August. And I can tell you, we did this last August, and one of the girls, it just touched me so deeply because she said that 2 weeks before this contest ended, she had been bullied tremendously so. And she found out about the contest by one of her counselors at school, and they did a video, and she won an award, and she sat there with tears in her eyes, and she said that she had no idea that one of the most horrible things that she ever had to go through would put her in a position to be able to help others and do good in the world. It doesn't get much better than that.
As with the proliferation, with the internet, with all kinds of information out there, financial advice, financial calculators, everybody and their brother clamoring for Americans' attention about everything. How do you feel? Why have you been so effective, you think, cutting through all this clutter and connecting?
Because what I provide is real, relevant, everyday stuff, and I break it down to the simplest form. We have an attention problem in America. If you can't get me what I need in 3 minutes, it's not going to happen. So I think that what I'm talking about is relevant to day-to-day, everyday life for the majority of Americans out there. And I really, truly want to help, and my wish for people is that they use the information, they share it with those that they love and they care about, and everybody knows something about money, right? It's kind of like the FedEx logo. We all know FedEx, but how many of you really know that there's a hidden arrow in that logo between the E and the X? When you look at it, it's obvious, and that's kind of what I do for people with money. We all know about money, and there might be something hiding there, but until somebody points it out, you don't even know what it expects. And I know the next time you see a Federal Express trust, you're going to look.
Denise, and again, we're not trying to pass out advice here, but just from sort of a global, from 30,000 feet, as 2014 begins to kind of open up in front of us here, what kind of advice or what kind of plan or what kind of strategy or mindset maybe from where you sit at Teaching Money Matters should sort of the average American family, sort of the double income, we're not poor and destitute, and we're not quite paycheck to paycheck, but almost. What are some things they can do to really feel good and feel like they're heading down the right track?
Well, I think, number one, planning ahead for good news. You're going to get some financial windfalls, most likely with a tax return or a raise, that type of thing. Strategically planning that is huge. But also at the same time, simulating your own financial disaster is a big deal, because that will help you take inventory. And inventory is probably, if I had to say, the number one thing that we should all do. Just like businesses at the end of the year, they take inventory, right? They look at their sales and their expenses, and they see what they have left on hand. And that's what we need to do as our households. We need to look at as a business and stop and, as you said, Warner, go to the kitchen table, sit down for 30 minutes, hopefully with your spouse, and just list out what your current worth is. How do you have, what are your valuables, and what's your debts that are there? And then is the number negative or positive? And then one more calculation, and that would be to calculate the value of an hour of your time at work. Just looking at your paycheck and dividing your hours by your net pay will tell you how much of an hour of your time is worth. So that can help you better decide in 2014 how you spend your time and what you buy.
When you talk to families and you say, when you give them advice or, again, at least sort of share some ideas that you have, what kind of a reaction do you get? Do you say, wow, we've never thought of that, or we've tried that, or what do you hear from them?
I get, that's powerful. And they have really, a lot of the ideas, as I was just talking to somebody 2 days ago about the credit cleanse. They're like, wow, I've never thought about that. And then I had another guy tell me the same thing. He goes, you know how much money I've saved by just thinking about an hour of my time and where I spend it. So I do get that a lot of people aren't thinking about money, and that's what I want to be, is just a fresh way and put a more positive spin on it, because we can feel so out of control. There are resources out there, and I want to be one of those trusted resources for people to give them fresh, new ideas. I think we're all tired of being beaten up and all the negativity out there.
Right.
A lot of times people are just looking for a bright spot, and I want to be that bright spot for them.
Have any thoughts, advice, or reflections on the value of to pay off or not pay off a mortgage?
You know,
that's a big one, I know.
Here's the deal. I like to be debt-free, because if the closer I am to being debt-free, that means nobody has an entitlement to a portion of my paycheck. There's a lot of tax strategies out there, and as you alluded to earlier, we're all in a different financial situation, and I wish it was cut and dry and you could say yes or no. You want to really connect with your professionals. Your banker, your accountant, and your lawyer will really help you make sure that you're strategizing. My personal play is I don't like to pay interest. Even if I'm paying interest and I can write a portion of that off, I'm still paying a portion for money that I could be keeping. So,
right.
So,
yeah.
You know, but there are strategies. If it's an investment property, there's so many things that you can take into a mortgage that can't go into that yes or no answer.
Right. What about, I want to ask you a couple things about our educational system. And again, overall, how good are our public schools coast to coast doing in at least starting to show or shed some light on how to handle finances? And two, what kind of preparation do you see our college grads, what kind of preparation have they had, and how well equipped are they to at least handle the beginning portions of their financial life?
Boy, such a great and loaded question. I think, there's a lot of initiative out there to get financial education into our school system with financial literacy. I can tell you I do high school talks and speak to, 500 students at a time, and what they will always come up to and say to me is, wow, I learned more in this hour and a half than I did in an entire semester of economics, whether it's macro, micro, because a lot of times the teachers tell me it's very hard to teach this from a book without a lot of life experience behind it, and some of the people teaching may not feel qualified to teach. So it's a tough one, and our schools are overburdened, and a lot of times, you might have experienced this, young people, when there's baggage, if you're trying to learn something from an authoritative figure, I don't know about anybody else out there, but, my daughter didn't always want to listen to me when she was 16, 17, 18. So trying to teach your kids about money from an authoritative figure, whether it's a teacher or, a parent, grandparent, pastor, whatever, can be a challenge. And, I was giving a talk down at University of Southern California, a really prestigious school, and I had a student come in and said he dropped in on a whim, and he had no idea about his credit and what he was doing with his credit as a student and how that might affect his ability to get a job, and, where he lived and what he drove and all of that stuff that your credit score, you wouldn't naturally think that it can affect that. So I still think there's room for some of that real-world stuff to creep in.
Okay, as we kind of start to wind down here, again, we're talking to Denise Winston, one of America's leading financial experts. She speaks to schools, she speaks to government groups, she speaks to private enterprise. She has a tremendous resource going called Teaching Money Matters. She's got a website we'll talk about before we close out here. very much involved in educating you about how to be better and more educated with your money. Denise, as we wind down here, and this may be a little bit of advice time here, but as our listeners look into the abyss known as 2014, what are maybe two or three ideas, two or three sort of must-dos this year that you think will benefit people financially?
Wow. Taking control and really commanding that. Number one, really looking at your financial situation and making sure that you're not leaving any money at work. If you're working for an employer, you really want to comb through and make sure that you're not leaving anything on the table in the area of your benefits. And this is the must-do for those people working. Grab a folder and title it Accomplishments. Because when your raise comes around at the end of the year, we're just going through this process now where people have been through, submitting their information and they're going to be evaluated for a raise. You want to be able to prove your worth in advance to your employer, and that is going to strategically put you in a position so that they can consider giving you a bigger raise. So really looking at that. And then, setting those goals, making sure that you know in advance what you would do with money and being strategic about how you handle your money on a monthly basis and communicating with whomever is in your household about those financial goals on an ongoing basis.
Well, it is a subject that continues to unfold and will continue to unfold as long as there are people stalking the earth. A good one here. Denise Winston, one of America's true financial experts and a friend of you and your money. She has an interesting resource called Teaching Money Matters. Denise, again, we've said this before, but tell us how our listeners can find out more about you, Teaching Money Matters, and some of the resources that you offer.
People can go to moneystartshere.com, and the way to remember that is people always say, Denise, I don't know where to start. Where? moneystartshere.com. And on that website, you can go straight to Amazon. You can order a copy of my book, which is filled with all kinds of checklists, information. It's designed to be a resource guide for you to deal with money on day-to-day situations. And it seems like everybody we know knows somebody struggling or somebody getting ready to go out into the real world of finance, so it's a great gift. Or you can go to the video learning page. There's tons of videos there, or even my blog, lots of ideas on just dealing with money and making a better way. Bottom line, it's your money. You worked hard for it, and I'm here to help you avoid costly money mistakes.
Wow. Listen, thank you again so much for your time, your sage advice, and boy, have a great year this year.
Same to you, Warner, and everybody out there listening. Glad to spend some time with you.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.